Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting a banner plane.
You're getting a banner plane? Well, I'll fly it for you.
I was thinking about that. There are a lot of them for sale out there at Smith Reynolds Airport every once in a while. And I was just thinking about getting it and flying it around the Triad here in North Carolina, Piedmont section of North Carolina.
Okay. Well, it's been a while since I've flown a plane, but I am a licensed pilot and I can fly that for you.
Good. I'll be down there to pick you up in a few hours.
Oh, mercy. Okay. Well, again, thanks for listening and tuning in to FAIRtax Power Radio. We would advise people, if they can, to share these videos, tell their family and friends about it. We need to get the FAIRtax gospel out to as many people as we can. And one of the ways we do this is to show up every week here on the podcast. And if you're listening on the video podcast, if you're listening on one of the radio stations, if you're listening to the audio podcast on Spreaker, we certainly thank you for your time and attention. And hopefully we can, do you remember Leonard Post Toasties? Do you know who that is?
Leonard's Losers.
Yes, we can dispense some smart pills about the tax system. Now, people who have never seen that show and has no idea what we're talking about. This was a guy quite a while ago. He would pick the losers in the college football games every week, and of course he would define his prognostications as a dispensing smart pills. So now that you know how all the games are going to go, so I have no idea where that came from. That was just
was Leonard Postero.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's no longer breathing. He showed up at the radio station I worked at in Florida one time, and he was the best interview I ever did on the air. He was just as off the wall in person as he was on his broadcast.
Talking about, he was born in Athens, Georgia, and graduated from the University of Georgia, and was an aviator. We were just talking about flying. Maybe we could have gotten. But he was in the U.S. Navy in World War II. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think there are a couple of videos of him still left over on YouTube. So let's. I didn't mean to get off into that particular patch of weeds, but he sure was fun to listen to. But I'll tell you what else is fun to do, and that's to see what the Congress critters are doing to the tax code that we do every week here on FAIRtax Power Radio.
Well, go ahead. This is an exciting portion of the radio program. I'm always ready.
Oh, yes. See if I can bamboozle you with what the Congress critters are trying to do. Here we go. This is H.R. 4963 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow workers an above-the-line deduction for union dues and expenses, and to allow a miscellaneous itemized deductions for workers for all unreimbursed expenses incurred in the trade or business of being an employee. Got that?
No.
Maybe we should just let that one lie there. Again, they're trying to let workers who have to pay union dues to an above-the-line deduction for your union dues. So I would think they're trying to use the tax code to encourage union membership, and that's an issue that we're not going to take a position on one way or the other than to mention that it's crazy to use the tax code to do that kind of stuff.
Any of the attempts to encourage or discourage economic activity primarily, it doesn't belong in the tax code. The tax code is tied up. It's like somebody spilled a big wad of spaghetti out of the pot onto the table, and it's just all sitting there, kind of blue.
All right, let's move on. S2641 is our second item on the agenda today. It's a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to extend the publicly traded partnership ownership structure. So apparently there's a publicly traded partnership ownership structure of some kind defined in the tax code, and this bill wants to extend that partnership ownership structure to energy power generation, and also to transportation fuels, and your favorite for other purposes.
You might have forgotten something, so you might as well go ahead and stick the catch-all line in every one of them, just the stamp right on it, or other purposes.
How about this?
was there first. Yeah, in order to find, if they come up with a for other purpose, they have to remember that they had it in there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. All right, try this one. S2621, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to expand and improve health savings accounts and for other purposes. Well, I tell you what, if you want to help people save to be able to take care of their own health care needs, why don't you just quit taxing their income and let everybody save tax-free for anything and everything they want? Oh, guess what? You can do that with the FAIRtax.
How about that? And that's the thing, you know, under the current tax structure, health savings accounts are wide open. You can send them, you can save, again, an encouragement for saving.
Yeah.
But you accumulate, and what you don't use, you can pass on in your estate to your offspring.
You know, they supposedly let you fund these health savings accounts with pre-tax dollars. It's like contributing to a 401k, that the money you put into your health savings account doesn't count against your income for tax purposes. So then, so they let you pay for health care with pre-tax dollars. Why don't you just pay for everything with pre-tax dollars by not having such a thing as post-tax dollars? You quit taxing your money when you make it, and you tax it when you spend it. And that's what the FAIRtax is all about. So we need to change the system.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about healthcare, I'll talk about education for a second.
Go ahead.
Education, cost of education is not taxed under the FAIRtax. You don't pay if you're going to the university of wherever you're going, and they send you the bill for the semester. There's no tax involved in that under the FAIRtax. Education costs no tax through the FAIRtax.
Yes, because the FAIRtax is levied on retail purchases of new goods and services, and education is basically considered an investment in your own self, you know, better future. Right. So education is, so going to college or going to trade school or going to anywhere that you got to pay a tuition to get some kind of training or education. That is not considered a retail purchase under the FAIRtax, so therefore there will be no FAIRtax on that transaction.
Absolutely, and that's exciting. That's the other part of it that's exciting. There are things that you can be assured will ride through the FAIRtax system without being taxed, and that education is a big one.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, we got one more to go here on our congress.gov segment. And again, what we're doing, you put the words Internal Revenue Code in the search bar at the top of the congress.gov page, hit go, and there's 815 hits on that search as we're doing it today. But our last one is HR 4919. Now dig this one. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a wealth tax and for other purposes. Now, guess what? The FAIRtax will tax wealth already, not just income. It will tax existing wealth. If you got, $18 million in the bank and you decide you want to buy something with it, that will be taxed under the FAIRtax when it's not taxed under the income tax.
Right. Yeah, it's why it's called the FAIRtax, because it's fair.
So if you want to tax wealth, then you want the FAIRtax.
Well, and I think too, if you want to buy a yacht, that's $5 million or something like that, and you have the wherewithal, the ability to do that, well, you should be able to do that. But you will pay the commensurate tax. You will pay the tax on that.
But only if it's a new one.
I was getting ready to say, if you buy a, that would be a transaction without a tax added in under the FAIRtax, which is, I think, really going to set used everything is going to be well sought after. People are going to, and I hadn't thought about this, but you know what? That might happen there too, is new construction for a home. We'll just take that for an example. Wouldn't items be paid more attention to build them so that they would last longer, because the market for used items would shift from buying new, buying used more. And wouldn't
Could
that
be.
transaction of manufacturing whatever it is that you want to manufacture, wouldn't attention be given to something that would last longer at that point?
Well, hopefully so. We could. We'll have to see. Of course, yeah. When the fair tax replaces the income tax, then the demand for used items will increase, and there will eventually be an equilibrium reached. The fair market will eventually find an equilibrium between new prices and used prices. So it's all going to come out in the wash anyway. But I just like the idea of not having to tell the government anything about how much money I make or where I make it or how I spend it or how much I give to the church and how much I spend for health care, how much I spend for this, that, and the other, and whether my home office is X number percentage of my home space. None of that is the government's business, and it is under the income tax. It is not under the fair tax.
Somebody comes in with a tape measure. I need to measure your office for tax purposes.
Yeah, an IRS agent knocks on your door and comes barging in with a tape measure and wanting to do it, which brings you exactly to this article that you sent me that we're going to talk about now on FAIRtax Power Radio. The IRS, we talked last week about how the IRS, their criminal investigation division, showed up at a Florida business and in full tactical gear, a couple dozen of them. And then we didn't really get a lot of detail on exactly what they did. And they did the same thing to a gun store, I think it's out in the West somewhere. And so they've decided that they're going to keep raiding businesses. But in its infinite benevolence and kindness, the IRS has decided that they are no longer going to show up at a taxpayer's home and just barge in unannounced like that. I wonder how many IRS agents were met with homeowners with a Glock in their hand when they showed up at theirs.
I got a drink in one hand and a firearm in the other. Hey, what can I do for you? We'll be stepping backwards off your porch.
All right. But this is another Epoch Times article written by the same gentleman that we highlighted last week, Tom Mazadek. It's saying the IRS has announced a major yet common sense policy change, which tells you that their previous policy was not a common sense position, but they have now decided they will put an end to most unannounced agent visits to taxpayers' homes, mostly because of security concerns. I wonder how many armed homeowners were showing up greeting these tax agents when they made unannounced visits at their door, and the IRS said, "Oh, we're not going to do that anymore."
Barking dog, or we have a dog that's bark is just, it's very intimidating. We have people come over, and we have to, for the time being, we have to put him in the bedroom and close the door because his bark is like yahoo, and people are like backing off the porch. We have more deliveries, the packages that come to the house that have to be placed on the porch that are pitched onto the porch from about 15 feet away.
Well, hopefully there's nothing fragile in those packages. And I guess the other side is that the porch pirates would be not particularly wanting to visit your porch.
Come anywhere near it, let me tell you. So anyway, this common sense policy change is in effect immediately. And get this, reversing decades of policy that saw IRS revenue officers knock on doors of taxpayers' homes without forewarning in attempts to resolve delinquent tax matters. And I'm thinking, the guy the homeowner is working. So that means they're going to be coming around time to eat or even later. I wonder how long. I mean, now that it's over, it doesn't really matter, but how late in the evening would it be appropriate for them to come in? The reason for the change, according to a statement by the agency, is to lower the risk that anxiety-provoking surprise home visits by tax enforcement agents could spiral out of control, posing a hazard to both taxpayers and agency field officers. I bet they're more.
How about this? So unannounced door knocks at homes and businesses were considered high-risk encounters. Agents will believe this, routinely facing hazards and uncertainty when making surprise visits. Yes, I bet you there are some agents that were met with. I'm not going to go there again. Go ahead. I got this tickle in my throat again. It won't go away.
So we need to call Salisbury up and see if they'll be glad to sponsor the program, since you'll pull your cheer wine up every now and then. Folks that don't know what Cheerwine is, just go to your favorite search engine and hit Cheerwine. So anyway, this is part of that psychological weight that hangs over transactions with regarding the income tax. So here we go. Unannounced visits also created what the IRS called confusion. IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel said in a statement, quote, "These visits created extra anxiety for taxpayers already wary of potential scam artists."
Yeah, what if somebody shows up at your door and says he's not an IRS agent and he's not?
Well, I mean, there's scams out there everywhere. That's true. With the way you can, fix a badge, in one of the photo manipulation applications. At the same time, Commissioner Werfel continued, the uncertainty around what IRS employees faced when visiting these homes created stress for them as well. This is the right thing to do and the right time to end it. It seems like Werfel is sort of moderating some of the more potentially nefarious or hazardous to both parties activities of the Internal Revenue Service. Says it's a common.
How about instead of ending that activity, we end the IRS?
Yeah, I'm all for that's next step. Put them on the Greyhound bus and send them to somewhere near wherever they would go if they weren't working for the Internal Revenue Service.
Well, I'm sure there are plenty of other positions open within the federal government that displaced IRS agents could fill if we get rid of the IRS like we're trying to do with the FAIRtax.
Put a kinder face on the tax enforcement agency.
Yes, let those people we talked about last week that are carrying the guns and IRS agents like that, send them down to the border. Let them work for with the Drug Enforcement Administration of the Border Patrol.
They have the guns and the riot gear. They're already. They can interchange. So
this just makes you laugh when you hear the IRS say we're taking a fresh look at how the IRS operates to better serve taxpayers and the nation. I have never considered the IRS to be a service agency.
They're going to serve you a piece of paper and invite you to come to jail. A rollout of a new strategic operating plan, SOP for short, which is the kinder, gentler strategy. And it's just, I would think that there's a union. Did you know there's a union for tax agents? Did you know? I mean, I would think.
IRS agents are unionized? No, I did not know that.
National Treasury Employees Union praised the decision to shift policy regarding unannounced door knocks. And I guess because, they have read the writing on the wall that, it's a risk, first of all, because of the scam. Homeowners may be wary of, is this person legitimate coming to my door saying he's with the Internal Revenue Service? Mm-hmm. In college, when, I'm from the dean's office and I'm here to help you. Those are words you never heard. So the fellow that's president of the NTEU, the union, applauded the quick action after hearing the safety concerns that were raised by the union leaders and IRS field collection officers and employees who face dangerous situations. Now, back up to last week where you're talking about the gear, the protective gear and the weapons and firearms that the 25 to 30 agents had going into Stuart, Florida's, into the industrial area there, into that particular business. It's all happening. Very complicated. It's part of the United States government that doesn't need to be there. Obviously, they've negated that visit your home. They need to just go ahead and take the next step and negate the whole agency.
Why have a tax system where this is even necessary in the first place? Why have a tax system that is so openly prone to evasion? Why do we have a tax system in which we talked about this phrase, tax crimes can actually take place? when you pay your taxes at the cash register as part of the prices of the things that you normally just routinely buy, if that is the system, none of this ever happens. You don't need, armed agents to enforce a consumption tax like that. And also, if under the fair tax, if there is an issue, the issue is with the vendor. It is not with the individual taxpayer. So if XYZ market is collecting the fair tax from their customers but not sending it in, that's not the customer's problem. There will be absolutely, positively no enforcement action of any kind directed at individuals under the fair tax. That the enforcement and the administration will focus on the vendors that collect it and remit it back to the state almost revenue agencies.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that retail purchases, you as a consumer, you make the decision, as we've said many times, on when you pay your tax. Under the fair tax, you can decide, like today, I'll be eating vegetables from the garden. We'll be cooking up some squash with melted cheese and some onions in a Pyrex pan in the oven. That's going to be dinner tonight. And
you just wonder if you had 100 different people a blank sheet of paper and say, design me the best tax system you possibly can. I wonder how many of them will come up with the system that we've got now. I bet absolutely none. And again, that is exactly what happened when the fair tax was hatched. These business folks down in Texas had spent the entire day, in a business meeting and realized that we spent 80% of our time talking about tax implications as opposed to ways to advance our business. There's got to be a better way. So they handed a blank sheet of paper to a team of economists and said, devise me the best tax system we possibly can that funds the government at its current level. And what they came up with came to be known as the fair tax. It wasn't called that right out of the box, but it came to be known as the fair tax. And so when you start with a blank sheet of paper and design the best tax system you can, you end up with the fair tax, not the income tax.
Right. And of course, we're seeing within the current structure of the income tax, we're seeing the Internal Revenue Service, the agency, starting to bring themselves into their own self-compliance in terms of enforcement within the couple of articles that we've reviewed over the last couple of weeks. The change that they're talking about for the door knocking is only for the unarmed division of the Internal Revenue Service, not the Criminal Investigations Unit. They're going to continue to be able to go like they did in Stuart, Florida, but they won't be able to come knock on your door or mine. It'll all go to paper communication. So maybe a letter in the mail, registered, certified, etc.
But so I don't know if we have a tax code that has to be enforced at gunpoint, that says there's something wrong with that tax code.
Gotten a little out of hand, hasn't it?
I think
since 1916 or 13, and as we say this almost every week, or at least I do. We don't know of a time where we didn't have an income tax. I always, saw my dad doing the taxes, sitting at the desk, 2 weeks before April 15th, and we just don't know. Our generation doesn't. We hope to be able to get that back, so our children's children will be in the same position as the folks.
Yeah, the income tax was implemented 110 years ago in 1913. And even the system we've got now, where Uncle Sam grabs a big chunk of your earnings before you even see it, i.e. withholding, that came about in the 40s. That was the justification for that was we need money immediately to fund the war effort during World War II. And that was supposed to be a temporary measure that never went away. And so withholding goes away under the fair tax. You no longer, have to get a gross and net amount. You will bring home your gross amount because Uncle Sam will no longer be getting his fingers on your money before you even get it when we have the fair tax.
Yeah, just the most amazing thing. I mean, people don't stop and think about it. That they're getting the net amount of the money that their company has promised to pay them. They're getting the net amount, meaning something's taken out going somewhere else first. That means, quite frankly, you're paying the federal and the state government too before you get to feed your family. And that's the immoral part of it that I see. And I always say, income tax is immoral. Libertarians will tell you all taxes are immoral, but you have to fund the operation of your government somehow, some way.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are with an opportunity to do just that. Here in a very short period of time, the United States House of Representatives is going to vote on H.R. 25, which was brought to the floor again, brought to committee, but introduced again in this first session of this new Congress. And so we are going to pray on our knees that divine providence will come into the forefront and let us have a nice, real substantive debate on the fair tax this go round. So we have to be, as supporters, volunteers, the folks watching, listening, you need to call your congressman and say, hey, man, or if they're home in the recess coming up, you need to go sit down with them and say, hey, I'm interested in seeing what your views are on this. And I would hope that you would support the fair tax, Mr. Representative. But let me ask you this question. You for keeping the Internal Revenue Service?
Yeah, you're either for the income tax or you're for getting rid of it. It's your vote's going to have to show which side of that fence you're on, unless you are a real chicken liver and you vote present rather than vote yes or no when the thing comes up for a vote. Hopefully the speaker will not renege on that promise, and this actually will come up for a vote on the floor of the House. And that way we can see how many people in Congress support keeping the IRS and the income tax, and how many people would like to get rid of it. And hopefully we can see ads in the next campaign session of people who vote against the fair tax. This person wants you to keep feeding the government before you feed your family. And hopefully we can make it work.
That's it in a nutshell, for sure. Got to let people know. FAIRtax.org. You go there, go to the FAQ page. Sign up for the 1090. Sign up for the 1040 Club. That's where you give $10.40 a month to help fund new research. And of course, the all-volunteer organization, Americans with Fair Taxations. It takes a little bit of change to make the thing go around,
It does. And I'm afraid that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We're slap out of time again. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for sharing and helping you to get the fair tax into place. And until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you will demand it.
So tell me, how could I pay less taxes?
Less?
Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead, so how can I pay less?
Well, I suppose you could pay less taxes by earning less money, or you could give to charity.
How is that going to...
Actually, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but if you know the right people, okay, or if you have a really good lawyer, you can usually get around the big ones.
If I may, under the fair tax, to pay less taxes, you would simply consume less. You would control how much you pay and when you pay your taxes simply by choosing what you purchase and when you purchase something.
So I could stay...
In the next campaign session of people who vote against the fair tax, this person wants you to keep feeding the government before you feed your family. And hopefully we can make it work.
That's it in a nutshell, for sure.